Hello and welcome. My name is Scott Suskovic. I'm pastor at Christ Lutheran Church, and welcome to this podcast that we call Deeper Dive, in which we take a look at the previous Sunday's sermon and go at a deeper level for a great conversation. We're glad you're here. Well, welcome to this next edition of Deeper Dive. I'm excited about this one, Pastor Ryan, because we're coming to the close of this sermon series called God with Us. And we've looked over this past, 7, 8, 6 times about the different ways scripturally in which God has promised His presence. In the Garden of Eden, I think you kicked that one off.
Did I do that? Yeah. Oh, I did. I'm going to finish it off next week.
Right.
That's neat.
And then during the time of the Exodus in the wilderness, Shekinah, and then the tabernacle and the temple sacrifice, I talked about the Annunciation. Mm-hmm. Last Sunday, what we want to get into today is God's with us in the church.
Yeah.
As flawed and as broken as the church is God's chosen instrument. And to get at that, I had these different concentric circles. So at the middle of the church, the core of the church, where the gospel is preached and the sacraments are rightly administered, there's an obedience to the church that is to hear the gospel.
You can't say that's a bad word.
Obedience.
No. We don't like that word in America.
I know, but it is the right word. Obedience to hear the word, go to church. Obedience to participate in the sacraments. Do this.
Do this in remembrance of me.
The next circle, living out our faith outside of the church, which is really the ministry of reconciliation. Be the one that reaches. Be the one that forgives. Be the one that understands. Be the one that gives hope. So the ministry of reconciliation. All right. So the next circle is accountability. We're doing life together. And to do life together with broken, flawed individuals, we need each other to kind of bounce off ideas. Because if left to myself, my thoughts, my ideas, my goals, my aspirations are brilliant.
Well, and actually, isn't that the problem?
It is.
The problem is, and I think the sociologists and psychologists call it expressive individualism. And expressive individualism is, I know what's best for me. I know all that is good for me, and anything that I think is the thing that is going to be the best for me.
It's probably not just for you, but the best for the church and best for government and best for healthcare. And
I know everything. Why don't you just ask me already? And the problem with that is God intended for us to live is not so that we can be perfectly expressed individuals. It's so that we can be a collective, a group.
Life together.
And hold each other accountable means that I know something about you that you don't know. And here it is. You ready? I can see your blind spot.
That I can't.
And I can call you out on that in love. And I can say, hey, this is where you're sitting. This is the place that's cropping up. And so what does that look like? How can we change that? How can we fix that? And if you know all there is to know, you're not going to listen to anything I have to say.
Right.
And now we can't be church.
So that third ring is accountability, to speak the truth in love. I want to point out your blind spots in a way that you can hear it, and you can make some changes towards that.
And to hear it, for me to hear you call out my blind spot, don't we have to have a loving relationship? I have to not only
life
respect
together again.
You, right? But I have to trust that you have my best interest at heart. So you need to be able to, I have to know that you are coming from a good place before you even come at me.
Right. Yeah, don't call me a smarty pants if you're the smarty pants telling me how I'm wrong. All right, that's good. All right, so we've got the one ring, the second ring, the third ring, accountability. Yeah. The fourth ring, I use that phrase they taught us in pastor school, already and not yet.
Yeah, ooh, that's a good one. What is that? Paradox, right?
Paradox. We already have the promise, but not yet the reality. We already have the vision, but not yet the experience. We already have the forgiveness, but not yet completely pure.
Yeah, we are already saints, and yet I am still a sinner.
Right, that's in that paradox. And that is the proclamation of the church into a fallen, broken world. saying this world is not it. We get glimpses here and there, but the proclamation is, if for this life only we have hoped in Jesus Christ, we are of all people most to be pitied. So if we're only focusing on this world, man, it's not enough. So before I go into the deeper dive, any one of those circles just kind of give you an aha or a thought or an idea?
Well, I think they're all amazing. We could spend a whole sermon series just on those circles. And when it comes to being church, I think those circles are accurate, but they're continually attacked by culture. And I think that's the problem, right? How do we do church authentically, as God intended, without having to prescribe a certain cultural norm? So my mind goes to Islam. If you're going to be Islamic, you have to know ancient Arabic, and you have to read the Bible in that way, and you're going to have to hold on to these cultures. Yeah. Whereas Christianity is able to go into cultures, hold those rings, but then allow the culture to adapt. So, 100 years ago, Christianity was not the major religion in Africa, and now it is.
Yeah.
And how is that possible? Because it wasn't a cultural import. It allowed the culture to be as it is, and those rings are implemented into that culture. And that's the strength of Christianity. It's not that those rings are somehow conforming, but they are guiding.
Boy, I hear that, and I go off on a quick tangent here.
Yeah, where are you going?
I don't know if you remember, if you ever read in seminary, the book by Richard Niebuhr, in which it said, moral man, immoral society. And the whole point was, what's the relationship between culture and Christ?
Yeah.
Now, there are some who say that Christ is above culture. That is, these are the escapists. Oh. These are the ones that go to a monastery. These are the ones that don't even interact with. These are the, maybe the Amish.
The Amish is where my mind went, yeah.
So Christ above, we're not even going to deal with culture. That's one.
Yeah.
The second one is Christ against culture.
This is the culture wars, right?
Right.
I can't let my kids watch Harry Potter because they're being infested with magic sorcery and such.
And if we could only create a Christian culture, if we can only put a Christian in the White House, if we can only have a state that is Christian, then our troubles would be...
We would have that Christian perfect, that world that...
So Christ, they're in conflict with one. That's when you hear preachers say, the educational system or the governmental system or society is against us. That's where that preaching comes from.
Yeah, but it's neither, right?
Right.
Good. That was a jump. No. All right.
So the correct one is not Christ above, as if we have to escape.
Yeah, no.
It's not Christ against, or as if we're in conflict with it.
Right, no.
It is Christ and culture in paradox.
Okay.
That is, as Luther was saying, we have one foot in this world and one foot in the kingdom of God.
Oh, that's great. That's perfect. That's right what we're talking about. And that's the reality. You can't live in one world or the other. You must live in both.
And that's what I thought about when you talked about Christianity in Africa. They weren't trying to create a monastic. They weren't fighting the culture. They were realizing that you are a citizen of both.
Sure.
No matter what the culture is.
No, the culture is not the problem.
Good.
The sin is the problem. Right, and so then that gets us into okay, so we have these rings and we know how to live in the world because we have these rings and we can live in our cultural world. Where does that lead us? Where are we going next?
Well, I was thinking about C.S. Lewis's quote that I used on Sunday. Let me read it again. It talks about, do we focus on heaven and forget about this world? Or do we focus on this world and don't, live our lives with our head in the sky? C.S. Lewis said, it's both. It's that paradox. So he says this, if you read history, you will find that the Christians who did most in the present world, that is, they were change agents, were precisely those who thought most about the next world. It is since Christians have largely ceased to think about the other world, heaven, that they've become so ineffective in this world. So I'm thinking about the whole the slavery movement here, anti-slavery movement. These were deeply Christian people
yeah.
with their thoughts in heaven.
Yeah.
And yet, they spent their time here on earth trying to eradicate slavery. That's one example about you need to have that greater vision of what is to come to be effective right now.
I'm reminded of a quote that somebody brought up that when England decided to move away from slavery, they said, and the quote is that they were committing economic suicide by moving away from slavery, because it was such a boon to their economy that it would be such a bear that they would never get over it. They would never repay, because they ended up buying, right, all of the people out of slavery. Well, how about that? That
was a price willing to pay.
There it is, that they were willing to pay the price of this world for the nobility, for the people that were in slavery were so valuable that it was a valuable price, and it was a worthy sacrifice.
So I think about the extremes here. I think what C.S. Lewis is getting at, there were certainly people on the one side whose minds are always only in heaven. I think about some of those spiritual songs from the slaves. And it was almost like we have to put up with this awful world, this awful slavery, because I've got a crown in the kingdom. And there are those who just kind of put up with life, knowing that they're just going to escape it one day and they're going to be fine. C.S. Lewis saying, not that. But he's also not saying on the other side, I've got pastor friends of mine who say, hey, I'm not that concerned about heaven. I don't think it's the role of the church to talk people into salvation. That's not our job.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah. Our job is to be in the world. Our job is to be transforming agents in the world.
Yeah, but to what end? So they're humanist, but then, you know what the best thing to do is? It's just to take people, don't pay them, and just have them work, and then take care of them, and then make them work, right? You could almost create a kind of slavery, if you wanted to, with humanism. If you have the world's wisdom, you can twist that any way you want. So great, you're a good person, but to what end? What is your good? How do you even know what good is?
And if you actually reach whatever that good is, it's never going to be enough. It's the people that are too focused on this world. That is, if I just get the next raise, if I get the next promotion, if I get enough to put my kids through school, if I get enough to retire, it's never going to be enough. It's never going to be enough until they grasp the hope and the surety of the resurrection. That will be enough.
And I think that's the key. That's the takeaway here, is that when you understand what heaven is, then you understand what your purpose is. And now you have meaning. Christ has given
now.
Yes, in this world, because I know who and what I will be in the future. Now I know what I am to do here and now. And now all of a sudden, everything makes sense.
That's the urgency that makes us this holy discontent with the struggles of poverty. This is that urgency to tell your neighbor that Jesus is Lord. This is that urgency to work for things that make for peace right now, because we also focus in heaven. That's the message of the church. Obedience in the middle, yes. Living out our faith in a way of reconciliation, absolutely. Third ring, accountability, to help you see your blind side. But what a great gift it is to be the church, to have a message to speak to a broken, fallen world, that there is more to this life than what we see, touch, and feel.
Now, we're going to have a whole other podcast, because I think that if we take that to the next step, we're going to get to somewhere really interesting. And that is that the church has the answer for some very modern problems. Now, you and I are reading the same book.
Yep.
And in that book, it talks about the horrors that are a whole generation of people who are raised on phones and with phones and screens of such. And I think that there is a real answer for the church for that problem. That the problem is that we don't have relationships, that we're not in community, that we segregate ourselves willingly on our phones.
Yeah.
And the solution that this guy offers, you'll find later in, chapter 11 and whatever, he goes on to kind of give different things. The church has all of those.
Community.
So he says communion. Chapter 8, he says communion is one of the things that you have to have with each other, right? It's not enough just to like be in a room with people. You have to be known and know people.
Well, next Sunday, you're up to bat with the final one on this sermon series. How about we come back next week and see how that connection to that book, Anxious Generation, would fit with coming full circle.
That'll be interesting. Yeah, because next week we're going to talk about the final circle, right? Heaven, right? The thing that you kind of alluded to in all of your sermon. We're going to land squarely in that, and then what that hope looks like in this world.
Let's do that next week. Thanks for joining us here on this edition of Deeper Dive, and hey, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
We've got some pretty important services coming up. We'd like to see you there.
Yeah, 3, 5, 7, and 9. I can count in odd numbers.
Odd numbers.
7 p.m.
All right. Thanks for joining us.